So can somebody read the left-hand side, fear-based and love-based?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Fear-based, love-based, fear-based. You mean what you said? Karma is the consequences, both good and bad, that are brought to you based on your action, good and bad, your wish, but your action. Nowadays, karma is the gift that brings you results for your souls, personal growth, and you continue to bring these results back around until you have your life.
Okay, thank you. Can someone read the middle two posters?
Yes, Mataji. How people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours. Karma, okay. Karma has no problem getting back in touch with you when you need be.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Mataji. Can somebody read the right-hand side posters?
Mataji, can I?
Yes, please.
Karma, what you put out will come back to you in unexpected ways. Give only what you don't mind getting back to you. Karma cleanse. Be grateful. Act with love. Check your motives. Watch your attitude and forgive.
How many of you broadly agree with these definitions? Seems reasonable?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, absolutely true.
Reasonable, right? Very
Yes.
good. But then we have to always go to Shastra to verify. This is Google. I don't know who put out these posters. I just picked it up. Right? So we don't Google for facts. We always go back to Shastra to see, is this really what Krishna is also saying? So I'm going to recite the shloka. I would like you all to recite after me, because Krishna says karma is not easy to understand. Kim karma kima karmeti,
Kim karma kima karmeti,
kavayopyatra mohitaah,
mohitaah,
tatte karma pravakshyami, yajñatva mokshase shubhat. This is from chapter 4, the 16th shloka. Can somebody read the translation?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes.
Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune.
Very good. So Krishna himself is saying the most intelligent. And when he uses the word intelligent, he's talking about the Brahmanas who are well versed in the scriptures. He's talking about the rishis and the yogis. Even they get bewildered by what is action and what is inaction. And then Krishna is telling Arjuna, I'm going to tell you what action is. Having understood what action is, you can save yourself a whole lot of problems in life. And what is that? Krishna is saying you can save yourself a whole lot of misfortune. So let's recite the next shloka. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanah. Akarmanascha bodhavyam. Gahana karmano gatihi.
Karmano Gati.
So in the very next shloka, Krishna says, can somebody read the translation?
Mataji, can I
The
go?
intricacies of action are very hard to understand.
Yes, Prakash Prabhu, can you read a little louder? We cannot hear you. At least I'm not able to hear you.
The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know completely what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is.
So Krishna is saying what is actually action and what is inaction is a little hard to decipher unless you know the impact of what you're about to do. So for example, in the first chapter, Arjuna gives a lot of reasons as to why he should not fight. And or I would not say argue, he puts forth the proposition to Krishna that fighting is action. And because fighting is action, it is going to lead to entanglement. Therefore, I'd rather not fight, because if I don't fight, there is no entanglement or no reaction. So Krishna has to disabuse him of this notion, of this faulty interpretation of what is action and inaction. So again, Arjuna says, if I fight, I'm going to kill, and therefore I have to experience the sins of that killing. If I don't fight, we will avoid all the killing on the battlefield, and therefore I am not going to experience the sins of not fighting. And Krishna tells him, because he is a Kshatriya, he has a duty to uphold dharma. Therefore, as a Kshatriya, his duty trumps his emotions. He has to fight, but he has to fight to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Anybody who's upholding dharma is working on behalf of the Lord. This is not about creating our own rules and regulations out of convenience and thinking we will escape the intricacies of karmic influences. We are very mistaken if we think we can do whatever we want. In the material world, you can violate the law. I heard a little joke from one of the preachers that I was listening to yesterday. You know, this is something that we can all relate to. It is very early in the morning. The traffic signals are on. You are the only car driving on the road, or so you think. The traffic signal is red, and you have to make a momentary decision. The signal
Skip the
shows
red
red.
light. Skip the red light.
Stop
The
at
traffic signal shows red, which means it's warning you that you need to stop. But you decide, since it's early in the morning, what's the risk? The policeman is also not there, or so you think. So you whiz past the red light, and suddenly you hear a siren behind you. And the policeman pulls you over and says, did you not notice the red light? And the driver says, absolutely, I will notice the red light, but I didn't notice you. So we can't make this assumption with the laws of nature. The laws of nature are very stringent. It is not forgiving. So the only other question we have to ask ourselves is, what is dharma? What is duty? Inaction can cause consequences. So say, for example, there is a robbery happening in progress. And there are a couple of policemen in uniform witnessing it. And they do not do anything to stop it. They have not acted. So technically that is inaction. But they have to suffer the karmic consequences of not performing their duty. So karma is deeply tied to our duties and responsibilities in whichever varnashram you are part of. So Brahmanas, as we discussed yesterday, have their own sets of duties and responsibilities. Kshatriyas have their sets of duties and responsibilities. Vaishyas and Shodu Shudras. So we must be aware, that's just the 4 varnas. What about the ashrams? The brahmachari has his duties and responsibilities. The grahastha, a married person, has their duties and responsibilities. The person who's leading a retired life has duties and responsibilities. And the sannyasi, the renunciate, also has duties and responsibilities. So the 4 varnas and the 4 ashramas dictate what your duties and responsibilities are as long as we are occupying this material body. But Krishna will explain both in chapter 3 in Karma Yoga and in chapter 4 Transcendental Knowledge. We also have another duty, which is called the Nitya Dharma. So what I just described, duties based on Varnashrama principles are called Swadharma. Swadharma means everything based on the bodily platform. I, me, mine, my family, my society, etc., my nation, etc. But we also have a duty to Krishna and ourselves on the spiritual platform, and that is called Nitya Dharma. None of us can escape it. So if Krishna himself is saying that karma is very, very intricate, and unless you have really understood it, you will bind yourself more and more and more and more. The shackles will become tighter and tighter and tighter. And when the shackles become tighter and tighter and tighter, your free will reduces. Although your free will is never taken away from you, it reduces. So we were discussing yesterday, if you have children, as parents, you do place restrictions on your children, age-appropriate restrictions, but it is for their own welfare. It's not because you want to torture them. It's not because you don't want them to be happy. It's not because you want them to be miserable. So let us see what the chapter has to offer today. First of all, we have to acknowledge that there are disparities in this world. There is no circumventing the fact that all of us are not born equal. But there has to be a reason behind this inequality. A logical, reasonable proposition that helps us understand these dualities in life. And in the context of understanding these dualities, also understand what are you supposed to do about it. So we are going to essentially ponder the fact, what are the laws of the Lord? And how do we align ourselves to following those laws? And understand the intricacies of action, inaction. So, some of us are born into very wealthy families, or some of us become wildly rich. There are so many rags to riches stories. Some of us are born with disabilities. Some of us have exceptional physical strength. Same thing with beauty. Same thing with poverty. So if you only look at the surface issues, it would not be surprising that we would walk away thinking that God is a partial God. Because what else could be the reason that there is so much stark disparities in the world around us? Not just at individual levels, but even at society levels, at national levels, there are stark disparities. So let's first understand the meaning of the word karma. So just like, I was listening to Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's lecture, he was talking about the fact that in the English language, the word run, R-U-N, has the maximum number of meanings, and each meaning is different than the next. But the only way we understand what run means is in the context of the sentence in which it is used. So similarly, the word karma, as it is used in the Bhagavad-Gita, takes on different meanings based on the context in which Krishna is speaking. So broadly, karma has these four definitions. One is any and all actions that we perform with our body, mind, and intelligence. So karma is not restricted only to physical actions. It includes your thoughts. It includes your feelings. In the first slide, there was a very nice bullet point at the bottom right-hand slide about forgiveness. When people have wronged us, or we feel that we have been wronged by somebody, and we don't learn to forgive them, you have simply shackled yourself to that spirit soul. You will be forced to take birth again, till either you take revenge or you learn to forgive. If you take revenge, then of course you're creating more karmic reactions. Therefore, forgiveness is so important. No matter how much somebody may have tortured us or done us wrong, we have to have the grace to forgive. Which means if somebody did something wrong with you, but you don't respond in kind, just the thoughts of feeling resentment towards that other person itself is going to create karmic reactions for you. So the sooner we learn to forgive and the sooner we learn to let go, the faster we heal and focus on what is actually important, which is our duty and responsibility. So the first definition of the word karma is any and all activities and actions that we perform with our body, mind, and intelligence. Intent matters. Because intent is the seed for your future actions. Maybe in this life, or your intent is so strong for revenge, you are not willing to do it in this life, you'll have to take birth again to take your revenge. So the second definition of the word karma is the reactions we get as a result of the activities that we perform. Again, both on the body, mind, and intellectual realm, which is action, reaction. So the system of this action and reaction is also called karma. That entire black box that most of us would love to know how it works, but it would be a futile and frustrating exercise to try and figure it out. So action, reaction, and the entire system of how this works are the three different definitions of karma. In our culture specifically, when we use the word karma, normally we mean good reactions. Technically speaking, the word that should be used is sukarma. But it is interchanged with karma, and that is assumed depending on the context in which it is used. It means good deeds. So now that we've understood the four definitions of karma, let's try to get into the intricacies of this. So as for the Bhagavad-Gita, there are three categories of karma defined as activities based on the body, mind, and intelligence. So one is sukarma or karma. Any pious activity that you do, any good deed that you do, you're depositing in your bank account called punya. Any violations of dharmic principles is called vikarma. And this is considered papa or bad deeds. And then there is the third category called akarma. A karma has two meanings. It means both inaction, in the example of the policemen who are watching a robbery happen and do nothing. A karma also means doing everything in alignment and for the pleasure of the Creator. If we all focus on leading our lives in such a way where we are only performing a karma, then these activities go into a completely different account called Sukriti. So you have one bank account with both credit and debit, Punya and Papa. You have a completely separate bank account that is monitored by Lord Krishna himself. That is called Sukriti. So what we need to understand is that whatever we are experiencing in our life, especially the difficult situations, whether it is the loss of loved ones or some other kind of stressful, anxious
Hare Krishna devotees, it seems some problem with the technical problem with the Mataji's, from Mataji's side. Please bear with us for a while. She will be back within a minute. Hare Krishna.
So let's come back. So, so what we need to understand that ultimately, everything that Krishna organizes for us is really for our betterment. It's for our spiritual evolution. Yeah. Can somebody read Karma Yoga on the left-hand side? Hare Krishna. Can somebody read the Karma Yoga? Yeah.
Karma Yoga is essentially acting or doing one's duties in life as per his or her dharma or duty without concern of results. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme God, is not affected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Work is to be performed for its own sake, not for its outcomes. The one who performs an action with controlled mind and wisdom is wise.
So while we will not get into the depths of Karma Yoga in detail today, we'll focus on just karma itself. But because this is such an important aspect of our duties and responsibilities, I thought it would be worth it just to touch upon this at a very, very high level. So Krishna in chapter 3, Karma Yoga, talks about the different intents with which one can work. The first one is all of us have to work to maintain individual order for ourselves. And if you expand it a little bit further on the Swadharma platform, we also have to work to maintain social order. Then if you expand it beyond, because we are all interconnected in this universe, we also have to perform work as a sacrifice to maintain cosmic order, which is actually the worship of demigods, because the demigods supply us with sunlight, moonlight, rain, weather. So not only do you have a responsibility towards yourself and immediate society, nation, you also have a responsibility and duty, which is a symbiotic relationship with human beings who live in the upper planetary systems. Therefore, we have to work as a sacrifice to maintain cosmic order. Then Krishna says, if we come back to the material world where we are living on this, all of us have to work to set an example for others so that social order can be maintained. If one of us decides to violate this principle, then that one person is going to create problems for the rest of the members of society. So every one of us has a responsibility to all of us to maintain social order and to work in such a way that you set an example for others. This is what Krishna says. And in this, he gives the example of Janaka Maharaj, the father of Mother Sita. So one day, a group of rishis are discussing among themselves, being a king is not an easy thing. One carries so many duties and responsibilities, so much anxiety, that your citizens should be happy. They should do well financially. They should lead a comfortable life. They should have time to practice spirituality. and not mindlessly work like an ass. So these rishis were talking among themselves, saying, how is this Janaka Maharaj able to keep it all together? And still he is considered the greatest, one of the greatest devotees of Lord Vishnu. We don't have families of our own. We are spending our time meditating, and we find it so difficult to meditate on the Lord. Janaka Maharaj is considered one of the 12 Mahajans as per Srimad Bhagavad. Mahajans means they are such great personalities that the example that they have set for us, we must follow. So Bhishma Dev is considered a Mahajan. Bali Maharaj is considered a Mahajan. Prahalad is considered a Mahajan. Lord Shiva is considered a Mahajan. These are great personalities. We can follow the example that they have set. So the rishis decide to go and ask Janaka Maharaj, what is your secret? How do you stay so balanced all the time? And he says, come back tomorrow, I'll answer your question. So the rishis are puzzled. Why is he not answering the question right away? Why is he asking us to come back? So they come back the following day, and Janak Maharaj has laid out a wonderful prasadam banquet for them. He receives them very nicely. He washes all of their feet, seats them on nice seats, lays out the banana leaves, and he begins to serve prasadam himself to all of them. But there's a slight disturbance there. Above each of the rishis' head, there was a sword hanging from the ceiling on a gossamer thin thread. This, of course, made the rishis very nervous. They were wondering, what is this? We've been invited as guests, and on every single one of our heads, we see a sword dangling. Looks like it is about to fall any minute. But they understand that since Janak Maharaj is such a Mahajan, he certainly is not looking to harm them. So very quietly they have prasadam. Quickly wash their hands, and then Janak Maharaj said, I'm ready to answer your question now. But he says, before I answer your question, I have one question for all of you. As you were honoring prasadam, what were you thinking of? And the rishi said, we could not help but be nervous about that swords hanging on our head. But at the same time, we focused on honoring the prasadam. So Janak Maharaj said, similarly, for me, the sword hanging over my head is my love for Krishna. So as long as I am able to think about Krishna as I'm performing my activities, I am able to do all of them with grace. So Krishna also says in chapter 3 that the intellectuals in society, the Brahmanas, must not unduly disturb others and expect everybody to become God conscious. Krishna himself is saying this. Therefore, Krishna says, rather, what the sannyasis and the Brahmanas should do, they should slowly engage the people in working to serve the Lord, but they will grow at their own pace spiritually. This is not something that can be shoved down anybody's throat. A Jivatma has to be receptive to spirituality. And each of us will grow at a different pace. And then Krishna concludes, which sets the stage for chapter 4. The very last shloka in chapter 3, Krishna says, if one uses intelligence and transcendence, we can stop this cycle of self-destructive desires that causes us bondage. And in chapter 4, he talks about Jnana Yoga. So let us use a cricket analogy to understand how karma works. I have actually created this slide based on lectures given by His Grace Chaitanya Sharan Prabhu, whose video we will watch at the very end. It's a very interesting video. It's just 5 minutes. It's well worth listening to his lectures. His ability to explain concepts is just sublime. I personally enjoy listening to all of his classes. But here we go. So let us say I am walking into a cricket ground and I see a scoreboard. I don't know anything about cricket, but I do know it's a game. And I do know there are two separate parties that are going to compete with each other. And when I walk into the match, I don't know anything about what cricket is, but I see a scoreboard up there. It says India, whatever, the score is 450 runs. And Australia is 0. And the two teams are walking out onto the pitch. You don't know what that score means. And the game begins. Or at least you think the game has begun. So now, if you look at the scoreboard, there are only 3 ways to understand it in the context of karma. Either India got the score of 450 by fluke, even though apparently the game has just begun. So how did they get the score of 450 on the board? That means we have to believe in chance. So when somebody is born really poor, or when somebody is born blind, or when somebody undergoes extreme difficulties in life, one way of explaining all of this away is it's just a fluke. Somebody was rich, somebody was poor. There's no rhyme or reason behind this kind of disparity. It's just matter. We are just a set of chemicals that come together for a certain period of time and we dissipate, and that's it. That means we have to accept that we are nothing more than a product of our genes, product of some chemical reaction. It's a chance reaction of some molecular forces coming together and meting out some quote unquote experience to you, which also suggests that we all have only one shot at life and life is very brief. And therefore the conclusion is, as long as I can, I should enjoy myself to the maximum because nothing else matters. There is no law that exists. Therefore, I can do whatever I want. This is the mentality of materialistic people. So what happens then? So the people who are deprived and who are suffering, how does it make them feel if they have to be told it's just chance that this is happening to you? It makes you feel helpless. It makes you feel misfortune, that you are misfortunate. And conversely, it makes the lucky feel insecure because if everything is a chance, nobody knows when it's going to come to an end. But this assumption that everything is just a chance and there is no rhyme or reason behind it is actually intellectually also not appealing to us because it violates our sense of order and justice. And the worst thing is that if you have to accept this, there's no point in living for those who are suffering. That we are just helpless victims. And therefore, give up. Don't fight. Don't try to change anything. This doctrine of helplessness suggests that we have to believe that there is no cause and effect. None of us can accept this. See, the other extreme is whoever is keeping the scoreboard is biased. He's just given 450 runs to India and 0 to Australia. That means somebody arbitrarily decided one team will get a score of 450, the other team has to start at 0. And this is explained as follows, especially by the Abrahamic religions. That the inequalities and iniquities in life are nothing but God's tests for you. God tests some people and God doesn't test others. And they also say God's justice system is different than ours and we can never understand it. But then we have to ask, if we have to accept a God, shouldn't his justice system be better than ours? Shouldn't his justice system be far more merciful than ours? Shouldn't his justice system be perfect compared to our imperfect justice system? And then we also have to accept the fact that God gives different tests to different people. So imagine you're going to school, you're studying physics really hard, and at the end of the physics lessons for a year, your teacher decides to give different papers to different students arbitrarily, just because. So then we have to accept that God is a capricious God. He does everything by fiat. This person will get that person will get nothing. How can you learn to love God if God is so capricious? And the Abrahamic religions explain this. They believe that you have only one life. They do not believe in transmigration of the soul. So their explanation is incomplete because of the fact they don't believe in transmigration. So you just have to accept God's justice. Nobody knows how it works. If you're lucky, thank the Lord. If you're unlucky, thank the Lord. If you propagate this kind of thinking that God is just arbitrary, decisions are made arbitrarily, there should be no surprise in today's world there is far more atheists than in yesteryears. So one can forget about loving God. So Abrahamic religion talks about still, in spite of this, you have to love God. How can you love God if you cannot understand his will? So the only reasonable logical explanation for that cricket board score is that India has got 450 on the scoreboard because they played the day before. It is not a one-day match. Life is not a one-day match. It is a cricket match. So the only way this inequity and disparities in life can be understood is that karma exists. Reincarnation exists. But why do they exist? Life's purpose is to educate us, to help us evolve spiritually. So that means the lead or lag scores on the scoreboard is from a previous innings or from your previous life. So the object here is for us to graduate into eternal life by loving our Creator. So then the different starting scores make sense. One person is born rich, one person is born poor. One person is born with good health, another person is not. So the way we understand karma is that there is a cause and effect. How the system operates is very intricate. So our desire plus what we deserve determines our destiny. You already have that bank account of karma, both positive and negative. That is called samchipta karma. When you take birth, you don't bring that account to zero. You withdraw a little bit of the positive, little bit of the negative. The little bit and the ratio, we don't know how that works. We do not know how that works. That is decided by Lord. Whatever remaining desires that you have in this life, desires means material desires. I want to be rich, I want to be this, I want to be that, whatever that is. You will be forced to take birth again. Because you still have a desire. Now, you have a desire. When it's time, you also deserve because you still have that bank account associated in your name. So you pull some balance and come down. That determines your destiny. So we need to understand that karma is actually very logical. There's nothing diabolical about karma. It may be hard for us to swallow, especially if we're going through difficult times. But I hope that this analogy of whether it is chance or it is bias, or really we should accept the concept of action and reaction, cause and effect, reward and punishment, to truly understand this concept. So now, the typical question that is asked by everybody who suffers, I am a good person. Why are bad things happening to me? Yes, I am a good person. Why are bad things happening only to me? So this is from Chaitanya Charan's lecture. There is an immediate cause for our suffering. There is a remote cause for our suffering. And there is an ultimate cause for our suffering. So for example, if you put your hand in the fire, immediately you will get burnt. We can call it instant karma. So some of your actions will result in an immediate reaction. But some of your actions will cause reactions in the future. And a mundane example is if you eat spoiled food, it takes a few hours, and the following day you experience indigestion. So that is not instant karma. There is some time that has passed before you have experienced the result. And then there is delayed karma. If you're alcoholic and if you abuse your body, you can end up destroying your liver. So there is an immediate cause for karma. There is a remote cause, which is there in your bank account. And there is an ultimate cause. The ultimate cause for us is that we are disconnected from God. As long as we are disconnected from God, we are in the state of amnesia and confusion. We always will have difficulty just understanding what is the right thing to do. And our disconnection from God actually creates all of these issues. for us. Because we are not aligned to dharma, it creates problems for us. So when we evaluate situations in life, why is this person suffering so much? Only simply immediately paying attention to their immediate cause is short-sighted. Similarly, only paying attention to the remote cause, oh, you can be very dismissive, saying that person is suffering, they must have done something in the past life. Let them suffer, what to do? We have to tell them, suffer. Then that makes us very hard-hearted as human beings. One makes us short-sighted, the other makes us hard-hearted. So when we see the suffering of others, let's say you are in a pretty good situation yourself, how should you respond? But before we do that, so when bad things happen to good people, how should good people respond to the situation is what you see on the slide. We have to learn to tolerate. If we have committed past karma and we are suffering today, we have to tolerate it, which is that remote cause, what you did in the past. What happens to you now, today, you can certainly respond to that situation to the best of your ability. That is an action you have to take to mitigate your suffering. Suffering, karma doesn't mean you just have to tolerate and not do anything. If you are suffering, Krishna has given us adequate free will and intelligence to make a decision on what to do about it. Which means we should try to alleviate our suffering. And the ultimate cause of us being disconnected from the spiritual realm, the only way you can change that is to emigrate. What does the word emigrate mean? Is to move to a different country. Here, because we're talking about spirituality, emigrate here means deciding once and for all, I want to break free of the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and I want to go back to my original home. I am suffering because I am disconnected from Krishna. So every situation for us is an opportunity for spiritual growth. When things are going really well in life, that's when you should intensify your spiritual practice so that it gives you the strength to handle the difficult times in life. But how do we deal with other suffering? When someone is experiencing bad karma, the focus should be on the dharma of the relief giver rather than the karma of the victim. This is where compassion comes in. This is where serving others to help them get out of their difficult situation comes in. So when we see somebody else suffering, we shouldn't say you must have done something in your past. Although that is the truth. But that's not how we deal with each other. We have to express our compassion and concern. And if we have the resources to do something about it, to provide relief, then at the time of suffering, we should focus on dharma, not karma. So then how should we understand karma? Karma, you should only think of karma when you're using it to judge your own actions and correct yourself. We should not worry about other people's past. We should only worry about our actions and what can we do to change the trajectory of our life. So if you ever think of karma, think about what are the consequences I am suffering What should I do differently to get out of this snare? So remember, our past curtails our free will in this life. Which means whatever you're doing today, you are going to decide how much free will you're going to have in your next life. But see, the beauty of free will for anybody pursuing the path of spirituality is that even if the Lord has given them complete freedom, they will still obey the dharmic principles out of choice and out of love for the Lord. Nobody has to force them externally to be obedient. So when your child is young, they like to play, and it is a hassle to get them back into the house to study for exams. But that same child, when they're getting ready to do their PhD at the age of 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, the parent no longer has to worry about telling them, stop playing, study, because the child has the maturity to understand that this is a personal choice that they have made to pursue the PhD. They know it is going to be a difficult slog. So even though the student pursuing the PhD has complete free will, the parent is no longer restricting them. Willingly, they will sit and study. They do not need to be reminded. So that is maturity and intelligence. So whatever we do today, we're setting the stage for our next life. How much freedom are we going to get? But the Lord always gives you free will. How much free will He gives you is His decision, based on how obedient or disobedient you have been. So we'll conclude today's session. Although karma is a very difficult subject, our focus should be, we should spend more time being Krishna conscious and not karma conscious. Which means we should lead our life fearlessly. This concept of karma and hell and punishment that is there in our scriptures, if we read it, even that is going to cause anxiety for you. So we should not worry about the intricacies of how karma works. Rather, we should be worried about the only one thing that is going to set everything right for us, which is to follow our Nitya Dharma. Our duty is to serve the Lord, to please Him, and to act on His behalf. So we have to work on behalf of and for Krishna. I was actually, in the Sunday class that I was given, I was talking about the 4A principles that was, I heard from His Grace Radheshyam Prabhu. The 4 A's that we all have to remember all the time is, we have to accept the Supreme Lord. We have to align to the rules and regulations He has established. We have to act in a way to please Him. And we have to act on behalf of Him. These are the 4 A's we should remember. Accept, align, act to please Krishna, act on behalf of Krishna by helping other suffering souls. So there's a very neat analogy here about soldiers. You know, when a soldier is fighting a battle on behalf of his king or the government, and he kills many, many people, he is rewarded with Paramveer Chakra or Veer Chakra, whatever it is, different governments award, for representing the government very well. But killing by itself is an abominable activity. But in this case, it is authorized. And because it is authorized, he is rewarded. That same soldier who's no longer on the battlefield, he decides to kill his neighbor because he had an argument with him. That same government is going to come and lock him up. Why? Because this time he acted without their authorization. So a simple analogy, we must align with the laws of the Lord if we want to be rewarded. If we act to do whatever we want, whenever we want, without a care for dharmic principles, we have to be punished. Therefore, Krishna says, always perform a karma, work for me, work to please me, because then you can live without entanglement. What entanglement? If you work to please Krishna, you're depositing in the Sukriti account. Your deposits into the pious and Papa activity account has stopped completely. Completely. The day you take the shelter of Lord Krishna, your karmic influences end. Now you may say, wait a minute. Instantly, I'm still suffering. And Srila Prabhupada uses a beautiful analogy. When a fan is running and you shut off the electricity to it, the momentum still causes the blades to move. But it is no longer being supplied with electricity. So similarly, when we disconnect from Maya Devi, our karmic reactions immediately stops. You will suffer whatever rest you have to suffer in this life, in next life. You will continue where you left off until you are spiritually evolved to go back to the spiritual world. So our mood should always be, how can I serve Krishna rather than how can I avoid karma? Our focus should be on seva vritti and not bhoga vritti. Seva vritti means it's on the spiritual realm, serving Krishna and serving other Vaishnavas and serving devotees, serving humanity. Bhoga vritti means what is in it for me. So our attitude and focus should shift from bhoga vritti. Bhoga means to enjoy, to seva vritti. If we work for the right cause, there's nothing to worry about. Focus on action, not on reaction. Do your duty, don't focus on destiny. When results come, accept and don't agonize. Yeah. So I will stop here, but as I said earlier, we will watch a very short video. So give me a second, and my apologies for all the dog barking behind. I will just set the context as I play the video. It's just 5 minutes. So this is Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. This was a discussion that they were having with other devotees. This was at the time where a young black man had apparently provided counterfeit money to the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper called the police. And the police came, and in broad daylight, 3 of them sat on his neck and killed him, trying to arrest him. And it was not like he was resisting. So this video had gone viral all over the world. So the gentleman who lost his life, his name was George Floyd, a black African-American. And he was killed by 3 white police officers. All they were trying to do is put handcuffs on him. And all the time he was saying, I cannot breathe, I cannot breathe, I cannot breathe. But they didn't hear him. So the question was asked in this lecture, is racial injustice caused by past karma? But the answer that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu provides is going to be very enlightening for us in understanding situations in our life as well. Yeah. So we'll listen to this. Can everybody see the video?
Yes, Mataji.
Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
and how we cannot be hard-hearted, but really bring that concept to now what's happening all around the world, the protests, and given this incident, is karma a cause of racism? For example, if we just see this George Floyd incident, he died from suffocation, asphyxiation from the police officers, but from a karma perspective, we could perhaps see it as, well, sooner or later, if he didn't die this way, he would have died from something very similar. And the police officers who were all partaking in the, not active killing, but of killing or hurting George Floyd, if not in this incident, they would have been dealt the same, say, jail sentences or the murder charges in a different scenario. So if karma is one of the causes of racism, how does one not become hard-hearted to the atrocities happening just in the material world?
If things happen because of karma, then how do we avoid hard-heartedness? There is a very interesting incident in the Mahabharata where Vyasadeva meets Dhritarashtra before the Kurukshetra war and after the Kurukshetra war. So before the Kurukshetra war, Vyasadeva tells Dhritarashtra, stop your son Duryodhana from antagonizing the Pandavas. Let the Pandavas have their share of the kingdom and live peacefully with them. But he doesn't listen. Then the war happens. So now before that, Dhritarashtra tries to say to Vyasadeva that actually the war is destined. Then what can I do about it? At that time, he replies that, O king, it is very difficult to know what the will of destiny is. Focus on contemplating what your duty is and act accordingly. Now, after the war gets over, and then all his sons are killed, Dhritarashtra is devastated, is in immense lamentation. At that time, Vyasadeva comes and says to Dhritarashtra, do not lament. This war was destined. This war was destined. He said, what do you mean by that? So the idea is that philosophy ultimately is a resource for us to live more responsibly, to live more fully. So when we have to make some choices, at that time, we shouldn't think too much about destiny. We should be focusing most on our responsibility, our duty, and make the best choice at that time. However, after something has happened, instead of endlessly agonizing over it, why did this happen, we can use philosophy as a means for acceptance. Okay, this has happened by destiny, let me accept it and let me see what I can do now and move forward. So, in that sense, the understanding of destiny can give us a sense of closure. So, but that closure has to come after the things have closed. It's not before, isn't it? It's like, say, somebody has not yet died and then I want to have an emotional closure in this relationship. No, that person has not died till now. How can you have a closure? So we could say like that, before events have happened, we should work to the best of our capacity, focusing on what our duty is. Now, sometimes people may go off their duty thinking that they alone can produce the results. So, for example, if somebody thinks that, okay, it's my destiny, I want to become wealthy because I want to do this. So now if somebody starts becoming dishonest to gain wealth, that is not good because that itself will create some karma and that will have its results. But if somebody says, I will not work at all, if it's my destiny to become wealthy, I'll become wealthy. Well, no, you have to work also. You have to put your part, you have to play your part and you have to work. So we could say that now in terms of this particular incident where Floyd was killed so brutally, then we have to understand that that is an irresponsible action by the police. And they have to be corrected. So is it because of karma? Well, yes. For the parents and for the family of George Floyd and others to get a sense of closure. Now it is over. We could say, okay, let's say it was something destined, something was karma. Let's move on in our lives. In that sense, it's okay. But that cannot be used to justify a wrongdoing. So basically, we can never look at the philosophy of karma separate from the associate concept of dharma. Dharma is duty. So karma is what happens, it's destiny and reserve, everything like that. But always the two have to be seen together. So, okay, for doing my duty, which vision is acceptable? Okay, this is not yet destined. I have to do my best to make sure that the best result comes out. So let me do my best. But now this has already happened. Let me not obsess over it now. Let me move forward. So let me accept that as destiny and focus on what is my dharma now. Okay? Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Just 1 second.